How's everybody doing today? Today we are going to rank the zombie franchise. The greatest zombie franchise. That is the movies The Dead. the of the Dead series. That franchise. The Romero franchise. But it's going to be all of Romero's films, and it's going to be the three first remakes that were created for each of the first three films, which is the Night of the Living Dead 1990, the Dawn of the Dead 2004, and Day of the Dead 2008. We're going to mix those in and get a ranking video out of this, and it's going to be awesome. And coming in at number 9 is Day of the Dead 2008. And I had actually never seen this remake until actually today. It was the last film that I watched out of these 9 films, and I watched it today for the very first time. And at the beginning of the film, I actually was like, I don't see, why people don't like this movie yet, because it actually starts off decently, like it's not bad, and then they go, and people are getting sick, and all this stuff is happening, and then they go to the hospital. And at the hospital, when the first person transforms into a zombie, at that moment, I was like, oh, this isn't going to be fun. This is not going to be good. And the ridiculous transformation of the instant necrosation of the flesh and just terrible special effects. And let me put it to you this way. This movie came out in 2008. The first season of The Walking Dead came out 2 years later, in 2010. The Dawn of the Dead remake came out 4 years before this movie, in 2004. This is not a good movie. And not only that, there are 3 ways that you can do a remake, and that is doing basically a shot-for-shot recreation. Some people like it, some people don't. It's kind of like a love letter to the original. Somebody that really just loved the original, or they're just wanting to do a quick cash grab by just recreating a classic. Second, you can take elements of an original story and make it your own. And then third, you can do what this movie did and make a movie that has no semblance of representation of its original namesake, except for the fact that it has some soldiers in it. And it has a couple of scenes that use similar phrasing and actions, but the overall sequence of events is completely different. And then at the end of the film, like, nothing's left to make you go like, oh, okay, like, this was worth watching. It wasn't. I do not recommend this film. It is not a good film. It's not like the worst zombie film I've ever seen or anything, but it's just not a good film. You could watch literally any of the other 8 movies on this list, and you'd be much better off. All right, and coming in at number 8 is Diary of the Dead. And this movie, um, actually, in my opinion, even though I feel like it's the weakest of course, the Romero films, it still has some quality parts to it. A lot of Romero's of the Dead series is about the human experience um, in showing how humans react to this strange, crazy situation and um, what they would possibly do and how they would interact with each other in these situations. That was the strong messaging that he kind of had throughout all of his films since the very beginning in 1968. And this one takes that to the next level with the them actually having the camera, doing the POV footage, found footage shots, and it being very human. Um, the one thing about that, though, is you have to write it better. Some of the dialogue in this film is really the dialogue and the way that the characters act in some of these situations. Uh, One thing that Romero was actually pretty bad at was the urgency of a character of characters in his films. He gave them more urgency, but they're still just as stupid as a lot of, or more stupid than a lot of characters in his other films, and so just it kind of goes back and forth. There are pieces of this film that are actually really enjoyable to watch to me, but there are pieces that I just cringe whenever I see it. And at number 7 is Survival of the Dead. And what's funny is this is not a bad movie like a lot of people make it out to be. This is actually another one that I hadn't seen. I watched this one yesterday. I hadn't seen this one before. And it is actually a very funny film. This is a comedy. This is not a film to be taken seriously. It is a straight comedy. It's comedy horror. I know that at points it feels very serious, but this is not a serious film at all. I 100% believe that he set out to make a comedy zombie movie, and this was it. And it hit the nail on the head. I laughed quite a bit at this film. I didn't take it seriously at all, and because of that, I really enjoyed it. But overall, it's just not on the same quality level as some of the other films. And yeah, but I could watch this film again soon if I feel so inclined to do so, and I will enjoy it probably just as much as the first time. And at number 6 is the original Night of the Living Dead from 1968. And this film is actually a very special film. This came out 4 years after the Civil Rights Act was passed, and came out the same year that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. And this had a black lead role in the film, which was of course not common at all back in 1968. And this movie is phenomenal. It is the birth of the modern zombie. It is just a fantastic film, and so happy that it was created. And if you haven't seen this film, the ending to it is extremely jarring and just comes out of nowhere and hits you right in the face. And but yeah, the reason this film is as low as it is on this list is because of the overall amount of enjoyment that the other films give throughout their entirety, but as a piece of history and importance that this film has, of course, would make it number one. And moving into number five is The Land of the Dead. And this movie is another one of the wacky ones. It is a very fun movie to watch, though, and very enjoyable. This is one that I actually got to see in theaters when it released, and I enjoyed it then, with the whole tank, like makeshift tank vehicle, tank truck that they have made, with all the guns and missile launchers on the top of it. The way that it's got the slum, the main city is basically all a slum now, and it's just this one white tower, where all the rich people reside and get to have, a luxurious life in this post-apocalyptic zombie-filled world. And then you also have zombies that carrying on with the end of Day of the Dead and going into this, we know that zombies in Romero's universe have the capacity to learn over time, and having these zombies learn and kind of one become like an alpha, or like the teacher of the others, and showing them like how to what they need to do in order to seek revenge for the regular humans coming into their land and killing them off. And it's a really interesting, cool concept. Now, the way that it is executed, of course, Romero, his movies are just kind of just wonky and wacky, and not, it's hard to take a lot of his movies seriously. There's two of his movies that really have a serious tone to them, in my opinion, and that's the first Night of the Living Dead and Day of the Dead. But even Day of the Dead has some of those wacky moments in it. And coming in at number 4, and this is where I'm probably going to lose quite a few people, but the reason I did this is I remember this movie was my second favorite of the Dead series before this, but I rewatched all of these movies, and some of them for the first time, and I realized that this movie didn't hold up as well as my brain imagined it to hold up. And that is the original Dawn of the Dead from 1978. And it was just, I remembered it being so interesting and cool when I was younger, and it still is, but it's so simple. It's just so simple. There's really not a lot going on in this film besides just 4 people trying to, survive in uh, this mall and just going back and forth to different stores and taking out some zombies and having a good time doing it in the beginning. And it's just very, but I don't know. There wasn't enough to it. Um, the point of it all was, them just having fun, like them being stuck in this mall and thinking they need all of these things instead of leaving and trying to find somewhere where there were less dead things. And I don't know. It didn't end up holding up as well. It's still at number 4, but it is definitely not at number 2, which I would have had it at previously. And at number 3 is Night of the Living Dead, the remake from 1990. And wow, I love Tony Todd. That's a big plus to me in this film. Bringing that original concept into a more modern, with more modern technology, better video quality, better sound quality, and this is one of those remakes that is taking a concept, and yes, it is done almost identically in some ways, but it was also made their own. And my only gripe with this movie is how the main male lead I don't want to spoil anything. The ending of this movie for the main male lead is my only gripe with this film. The rest of it, I absolutely love. I love Tony Todd's character, how his story ends in this film. I hate how they did it instead of the original ending for his character was perfect. But for the main female lead character in this, I absolutely love how this ends for her. And that part was why I put it higher. And also, the look of the zombies in this film is fantastic to me. I love how the zombies look in this film. The main issues I actually had with the original Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead were how the zombies looked. Now, I understand from a cosmetic, they were just a product of their times and the cosmetics that they had to work with. I understand, but at the same time, the zombies in those movies are lame looking. The zombies in this film, however, are fantastic looking, and I love them. Coming in at the number 2 spot. Now, this is a movie that in my brain memories, I did not enjoy this movie when I was younger. But I understand why. But it is The Day of the Dead, the original from 1985. And I understand why I didn't like this movie, because there's actually a lot to this movie. And when I first saw this movie, I was really young, and I was like, this is too much. I don't understand it, I don't get it, and I don't like it. Whereas Dawn of the Dead was a very simple, simplistic film that I could get into as a kid, and I understood why they wanted to go into all these stores and take stuff. Because there's nobody to stop you now. Just take what you want, right? As a kid, you're like, oh, I can get whatever I want. If the zombies are here, I get it. This, however, is this out of all of Romero's films, has is so deep and has just the most incredible storyline, the most incredible characters. Uh, that was another thing with the original Night of the Living Dead, the remake of Night of the Living Dead, and Dawn of the Dead. Like the characters that he had in these films, especially his first three films, are all very different characters, that with different personalities, and that is seen at its fullest in this film for Romero's films. And I absolutely loved every second of the rewatch of this film. My favorite character, of course, was the doctor that is trying to teach zombies how to behave in society. And yeah, I love that character. He's really cool. And getting it, and then once you've watched this film, if watching the Day of the Dead remake was kind of an insult to this film. Uh, they were like, we're not going to take any of your ideas and go with them. We're going to make our own thing, take your name, and we're going to make it really bad. And yeah, that such a slap in the face to this film. This has become one of my favorite all-time zombie films, and I thought that I didn't like this film before. And it is so good. If you haven't seen Day of the Dead, you should watch this film. I know a lot of people don't like these zombie subgenre, and I'm assuming if you're watching this, you're already a fan of these films, and you might just agree with me. Now, for number one, and you already at this point know what it is. It is the Dawn of the Dead remake from 2004. And I'm sorry to say it, Romero fans, but Zack Snyder and James Gunn combined to create this film, and it is one of my favorite horror films of all time. It is my favorite zombie film of all time. And even I haven't actually watched this movie in a couple years, and the rewatch with all of these other films, I was like, yeah, yep, this is it. I rewatched this last night, and I loved it just as much as I always have. This takes Romero's Dawn of the Dead concept and jacks it up to another level. It takes unique characters. Every character in this film, yeah, every character in this film is a unique individual, and a lot of movies miss that point, especially horror films. Horror films are really bad about not having very unique individuals with very unique personalities, and this one absolutely does. But just the atmosphere, the music, the way that these have become like feral rage zombies that can run. And I will say, I enjoy the slower zombies most of the time. But the way that Zack Snyder did the zombies in this film was absolutely fantastic. And just the whole, you've got another character with their own personality just on the rooftop of another building, and they're talking with the whiteboards, and just that whole interaction is amazing. And then the dog coming in, and just every single step of the way through this film, just you continue to go, yes, 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 give me more, give me more, give me more. I love it. And then you get to the end of the film and you go, really? Why would you end a movie this way? But you still love it. But you still love it. And yeah, this is the pinnacle of zombie films. I know it's not for a lot of people, but it is for me. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a like, please subscribe. Even if you didn't, that's quite all right. Leave a comment down below and we'll discuss it. Anyway, y'all have a great night, and I'll talk to you later.